Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the heir of the Uzumaki clan and got harem? Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. That two-timing mother tucker, I'll kill him before he lays a hand on Haku. Zabuza muttered and looked at Haku. Let's go. He looked at Naruto and nodded in thanks. Thank you, I never got your name, Zabuza said, and Naruto grinned. It's Uzumaki Naruto, the greatest shinobi ever. Naruto exclaimed, giving Zabuza a thumbs up. Zabuza gasped and took a step back, dropping his sword to the ground. Haku and Naruto's eyes widened and he regained his composure again. Sorry, but are you sure your name is Uzumaki? Zabuza asked and Naruto nodded. Yeah, it was my mom's surname, I guess. That's what Aji-san told me. Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. What was your mother's name, do you know? Zabuza asked with a whisper. I think it was Kanashi or something, Naruto said and chuckled. Kushina, that was her name. Zabuza said, and Naruto looked at the man. Yeah, that's it, that was her name. Naruto exclaimed. How did you know it? He asked and Zabuza looked at him sadly. Because Kushina was as far as he got when all of a sudden the mist started to disappear. Naruto and Haku gasped in shock and took a faltering step backwards, staring at Zabuza. The man was looking at them with shock written all over his face. His eyes slowly traveled down and found a blade sticking out of the right side of his chest. Naruto stared at the man as he slowly slid off the blade, and when the mist completely cleared, he found out who had stabbed him. It was Kakashi, and he was holding an Anbu-style blade with both hands. Naruto watched as Kakashi swung the blade in an arc, letting the blood fly off of it, and it sprayed the bridge next to them. One down, one to go, Kakashi muttered as he stepped over Zabuza's corpse and took a step towards Haku. Naruto was still staring at Zabuza's body, as was Haku, so neither of them could react when Kakashi's fist smashed into the girl's face, sending her flying backwards. She skipped across the cement and slid to a slow stop. Naruto was snapped out of his daze and glared at Kakashi. What the hell? I had them captured. He yelled and Kakashi shook his head. They are Nukenin, they have bounties on their heads, so they must be killed. Kakashi said and ran at Haku with his hand infused with lightning. Flashback no jutsu begin. Naruto sat alone on a swing as he watched all of the other children play tag. He wanted to join so bad, but he knew that the kids would shun him if he tried to join, so he sat on his swing content with the fact that all he ever did was watch. He was the watcher who was never watched. It hurt him, as it would any other 7-year-old child, but he learned to deal with it. Naruto sat there for about an hour watching his peers that ignored him without any hesitation, and when parents started to show up he quickly left. Their scorns and glares always seemed to be aimed at him and only him. Naruto ran down the steps from the park, ducking under people's arms as they walked, and they would yell at him in protest. He kept running until he was in the center of town near an alleyway. He looked around cautiously to make sure no one was following and ran down the dark alley and stopped in front of a wooden gate. He chuckled to himself and slowly pulled a large section of wood loose and ducked into it. On the other side of the alley was a boxed-in area with a large dumpster in it. He had about 2 feet of room between the gate and the dumpster, and since there was no windows overlooking this area, he was usually safe. He got down on his hands and knees and crawled under the dumpster and found a wooden platform that he pushed forward, and it revealed a large hole. Naruto quickly darted inside and pulled the wooden platform back into place, and he crawled down the small ladder that was near the hole. He dropped softly to his feet at the end of the ladder and grabbed his torch from the wall. He had this whole entrance set up nicely. He lit the torch with a pack of matches he always carried around and held it in front of him. He began to walk forwards for a while until he finally found what he was looking for, an entrance to the sewer systems. Naruto had found this spot when he was 2 years younger and on the run from a mob that was like usual trying to beat him. He had darted into an alleyway and found a small sewer cap, and he pulled it up with his small muscles and jumped inside. He had landed in the sewers and looked around in fear as a small stream of green water rushed by. Naruto heard shouts as people found the spot he had entered and began to run wildly down the tunnel until he found the entrance he was in. From there he had figured out everything else. Naruto took steady strides through the murky water as he walked along. He hummed silently to himself like he usually did on this walk until he came to a fork in the tunnels. Both led to different houses he had set up, but he wanted a specific one today. He turned to the right one and started to run down it until he heard a roar up ahead of him. He slowed to a steadier yet brisk walk as he neared the house in anticipation. After about 5 minutes he came upon his house and it was beautiful. When Naruto had first found this spot he was surprised no one else had claimed it, but he quickly found out why no one else had really claimed it. The tunnel led out to a pit that was about 300 feet deep if Naruto guessed correctly, and the sewer water fell from the sewer into the pit from a height of maybe 100 feet. The effect was a beautiful green waterfall. Naruto stepped out on the ledge and balanced carefully as he scooted to his left. The pit was at the further edges of Konoha because they couldn't have the sewer water near the village for sanitary reasons. So the pit was actually 500 feet in depth, but the water only came up to the 300 mark. The waterfall was 100 feet up from the surface, so Naruto was properly protected from anyone above. Anyways, along the edge of the pit was a small edge that Naruto had found one day. It protruded about 8 inches from the side of the rock pit, and Naruto had found that he could walk along it perfectly. Right now he began to inch his way towards his destination. If one were to come to this spot and be brave enough to inch along the side of the pit, they would find that if they crept along the side for about 50 or so feet, they would find a large cave, and this was where Naruto had his special home. It was so special because of many reasons. First, it was rather big and roomy. Second was because it had a natural spring running through it and trickled down into the pit. Third was because it was connected to a large network of other caves along the pit. Naruto looked and saw the 2 other tunnels that connected to caves and tunnels that were all located inside of the pit, some of them actually going underneath the water and out far beyond the borders of Konoha. Naruto liked to come here as often as he could just to relax and enjoy himself. He could drink from the spring and he could follow the tunnel for a couple minutes and he would find a natural hot spring too. When he found this, the boy was excited. He could bath in everything in this area. The only downside to this place was the long journey to get here, but Naruto was working on a solution for that. He had stolen a pick from a construction area one day and had since been working on making a hole that led to his other home in the sewers. Naruto sighed as he laid back against the smooth wall of his home. It was such a simple term, yet held so much meaning. Naruto, only 7, had learned so many skills he wished he had not been forced to learn. He had learned to hunt animals, how to steal, how to build, how to survive on his own. No one was around to help him. Well, there was someone, but they didn't bother with his life too much. It was the Sandaime Hokage. The old man had really cared for him, but the council had banned the old man from really seeing Naruto. So the old man gave Naruto homes, but they always burned down, so soon Naruto just tried to cut off ties with everyone and live by himself. Naruto watched as the sun slowly set and pink light flooded his cave and tears watered in his eyes. If only he could watch the sunset with family, such a simple term like home, but it meant so much to Naruto. Naruto picked himself up and walked from his cave and walked along the edge of the pit until he reached the main sewer line and began to jog steadily through the waters with his torch that he had set down on a rock in the sewers. Naruto soon reached the fork in the tunnels and ran down the left tunnel to his more permanent home. He soon arrived, and when he did he sighed in relief. It had been another great day. He looked around the small cave and walked over to his fire pit. It was in a small part of the cave that had been burrowed out to test the depths of the pit for the use of the sewer, and Naruto was thankful it was there. He could have fires, and the smoke would ventilate out through the hole and would harmlessly drift away. He walked over to the smoldering ashes and threw some of his logs on. The pile was getting small, and he knew he would have to make another theft run. He looked around his cave again and took into stock everything he had. In one corner he had his bed, which was just a bunch of blankets piled on top of an old mattress he had found. He had a few pillows that he had managed to steal, but as far as a bed went, that was it. He moved on and found his ever so handy couch and chuckled. He had a hard time getting that one to tell the truth. It took him about a month to even get it down into the cave to begin with, since he had to try and find another alternate route to the sewers. The couch was cozy to sleep on, but when he did his neck would get sore. He looked at his growing pile of ninja gear and laughed. He had become the weapons shop worst nightmare in the last year and had earned himself the name King Stealer. The boy was rather skilled at stealing and was always able to outrun the ninja and people chasing him. He walked over to the weapons and looked at the notebook that told how many of each item he had. He had 300 kunai, 578 shuriken, 50k sealing scrolls, which were all sealed into one scroll of course, 34 rolls of ninja wire, 5 pairs of weights, 100 boxes of exploding notes, and about 24 came in each box, and he also had several daggers he had been able to steal. Naruto had earned himself a small bounty in the Konoha's bulletin. If anyone were to catch and bring him to the Hokage, they would receive about 10,000 yen. That was how much trouble he caused. Even though there were some ninja who were impressed by Naruto, there were some who actually liked to chase him because they learned new things from him. Naruto stretched as he remembered all of his past chases and walked over to his ever-growing pile of clothes. Here he mainly had the same stuff. Orange jumpsuits, orange t-shirts, and black shorts. The clothing store owner was one of the only people nice to him and gave him all of the clothing that no one bought into Hat Month, and it always seemed to be the same thing. Naruto sighed as he pulled on his orange pajamas and crawled into his bed for another night of lonely sleep. He had to get up early tomorrow in order to start his route. First he had to hit up the food store and get some food for the week, then the weapons store, then the bookstore since he loved to read and was studying as much as he could, then he would go to the library. Naruto was dashing along the road as he left the last store on his list for the day. It was the best store to hit and boy did he love getting it. It was the store that had placed a bounty on his head actually. It was the scroll store. Hokage didn't seem like much, but Naruto had stolen over 10,000 scrolls just last week and he now added another 12,000 to the list. He would only hit this store once a week or once every 2 weeks because he had a way to really get as many scrolls as he could. Naruto would always go into the store under disguise and seal as many scrolls as he could into one single scroll and he always would hide it in a certain shelf. The bottom of the shelf could be pulled loose and replaced in a matter of seconds, so that is what he would do. The owner of the store never knew when Naruto would strike next, but when he saw the boy run from the store with a single scroll, he knew he had lost about 10 to 13k worth of scrolls in a matter of seconds. Of course no one knew how the boy was doing this, but either way the store owner yelled out like he always did. "Catch that little brat." He screamed and everyone knew that Naruto had struck again. Naruto laughed wildly as his legs carried him across the pavement and towards his alley entrance. He then felt 3 people chasing after him and he knew immediately who it was. Haruka, Mizuka, and Fukaru. They were the 3 Chunin that always seemed to be in the area he was when he stole stuff. "Naruto." Haruka screamed and the blonde looked over his shoulder at the Chunin. "Nah." He yelled and slipped into another crowd. He dived under legs and soon found himself running down an alleyway, not his main one, but just a decoy one. He turned and found the 3 Chunin chasing him down the alley and he grinned wildly. He pulled the lid off the sewer entrance and slipped in and started running wildly. He heard the 3 ninja drop down behind him and he turned and stopped running. "Naruto, get over here, we know all your tricks now." Haruka yelled with his big head jutsu. "Haruka, be careful." Fukaru warned, but the man paid him no heed and stepped forward. Swish. Wires sprang up all over and soon the Chunin were hanging upside down with their arms crossed over their chests. Naruto was laughing hysterically and ran off leaving the 3 ninja alone like usual. "Damn it, Haruka," Mizuka muttered. Naruto got to his home and threw the scroll into his ever-growing pile of them. He had also developed another skill in the last year or two and that was the ability to snare ninja in his crafty traps. He owned these sewers and knew them well. Naruto plopped down into his bed and sighed while he thought of today's haul. He had managed to garb the weapon he had wanted for a while now, in fact he got a lot of weapons today and was almost caught because they weighed him down so bad. He had gotten a mace, a katana, an axe, and a really cool set of nunchucks. The boy looked over at the weapons and grinned evilly. He had tricked the owner today, since he usually never showed his face twice in a store after stealing from it. He had hit the store up and brought his load back here and within a span of 3 hours had hit the store 3 times, which really made the owner mad. Naruto burst into a fit of little giggles and his 7-year-old body wiggled on the bed. 2 years later. Naruto had already made major moderations to his home. He had finally connected the 2 caves with 1 tunnel and could travel between both and had started making small chambers where he stored different things. He had a cave that made up his bedroom, a cave for his weapons, and a cave for him to sit back and read in on a nice futon he had stolen in the past year. He had actually stolen a lot of things, but he knew his stealing days were coming to an end. He only had 5 more years to go and then he would become an official ninja. The Sunday Ami had located him one day and told him that ninja school had already been paid for him and he was to start in 1 week. Naruto had been really excited at hearing that news. Naruto was now standing in the entrance to his spring cave and he was staring at the waterfall. The Hokage had told him all this 6 days ago he was to start school tomorrow. Naruto sighed and walked back to his main cave and looked around. He had signs that pointed in the direction of each cave and he looked and saw the one he was looking for. He walked towards his supply cave and grabbed his backpack off the floor. He had many and the one he chose was a dull black one that was the basic bag for supplies. He didn't think that he would need any weapons since he would just be starting off in school, so he packed some basic stuff. A few books on chakra, sealing, and Konoha's history, even though he didn't understand any of it. He also threw in some sealing scrolls just in case. He then made his way to his bedchambers to sleep. He had a big day ahead of him. The day came early and it was not as Naruto had expected. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto watched as Kakashi drew closer and closer to Haku with a lightning jutsu in his hand. Kakashi stretched a hand out towards Haku as though to puncture her heart and Naruto could only watch as he drew ever closer to doing so. What can I do? He asked himself as he stared at his sensei. He is my sensei and if I attack him then I can be punished severely, but Haku is my first real friend and if I let her die he said to himself. Kami, you just hate tucking with me, eh? Naruto said as he tore at his hair in anger. Kakashi thrusted his arm at a now standing Haku. No. Haku screamed. Naruto watched as Kakashi drew closer and closer to Haku with a lightning jutsu in his hand. Kakashi stretched a hand out towards Haku, as though to puncture her heart, and Naruto could only watch as he drew ever closer to doing so. What can I do? He asked himself as he stared at his sensei. He is my sensei and if I attack him then I can be punished severely, but Haku is my first real friend and if I let her die he said to himself. Kami, you just love tucking with me, eh? Naruto said as he tore at his hair in anger. Kakashi thrusted his arm at a now standing Haku. No. Haku screamed. Naruto's eyes widened in horror and time seemed to slow down dramatically. Kakashi, who had the lightning jutsu in hand, had drew his arm back and lunged at Haku. Chidori. Haku's eyes widened and she screamed, but before the attack could hit her, Zabuza appeared out of nowhere and delivered a vicious kick to Kakashi's face and sent him flying. The silver-haired Jounin flew backwards and crashed heavily into the side of the bridge and slowly slumped to the ground. Naruto winced as he knew that an attack like that would hurt just about anyone. His eyes slowly wandered over to Zabuza and Haku, and he found that Haku was already on her feet and Zabuza was leaning heavily on her shoulder. Blood soaked through the tight sleeveless shirt he was wearing, and Naruto could see where Kakashi's blade had pierced his heart. Naruto ran towards the two, but stopped and looked over his shoulder and saw that Sakura was too busy with Sasuke to notice him. He continued to run over to the two and stopped short as the panting Zabuza chuckled. Hey, are you okay? Naruto asked as he eyed the wound in fear. Ah kid, you have a lot to learn. Zabuza said and coughed wildly. What do you mean? Naruto asked and Zabuza chuckled lightly again. I don't have much time to talk right now since your bastard sensei wounded me like this, but I'll tell you what, Uzumaki hearts are located in the right side of their chests, not the normal spot. Zabuza said, and he and Haku were surrounded by a spiraling ice vortex. Wait, what? Naruto asked as he scratched his head. We'll be in touch soon, Zabuza muttered, and he and Haku disappeared in an ice shunshin. Naruto stared at the spot they stood as soft flakes of ice floated down to the ground. Just as the first of them touched down he heard a mass number of footsteps approaching the bridge and he turned towards the sound. Naruto's face dropped in horror when he saw the sight before him. Obito had appeared on the bridge and behind him stood hundreds of men and there was only 5 of them to face the army. That wasn't including the fact that Kakashi was knocked out, Sakura was a wimp, Sasuke was also unconscious, and Tazuna was an old man that would break his hip if he tried to fight. Naruto growled in anger as he cursed the heavens. Did you hear something? Kami asked the man in front of him. Nope, just deal the cards, I'm feeling lucky. Hades said as he went all in. The two entities were playing poker. Naruto took several steps forward and stood by Tazuna as the man stared at the army in fear. Naruto saw that the man was shaking and the blonde knew he couldn't do anything to really help at the moment. Naruto slowly reached into his pocket and drew out 3 kunai. He handed one to Tazuna who took it and held it awkwardly in front of him. Naruto held one kunai straight up in his right hand and the other straight down in his left. He settled into a fighting stance and Geto eyed him carefully. Naruto waited for the first move to be made and he waited for a long time too. The two forces, or the force and the teen and man, stared at each other for what seemed like forever. Naruto felt a sweat drop slowly make its way down his face and dropped off his chin to the ground. As soon as it touched he quickly crossed his hands and shouted. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. He poured as much chakra as he could into the effort and suddenly about 100 clones appeared behind them in perfect formation, all holding kunai like Naruto was. Naruto watched as several of the men in front of him shifted on their feet uneasily. He turned his attention back towards Geto and smirked. So, are we going to do this? The blonde asked and the man sneered at him. If you want a job done then I guess you gotta do it yourself. Geto said and pointed at a large section of the army. Squad A, attack, kill them all. Geto said and Naruto watched as about 50 men ran at him. Naruto let out a battle cry and he and all of his clones rushed out to meet the oncoming forces. There was a lot of metal ringing noises and Geto watched as orange blurs fought his men. A lot of Naruto's clones were dispelled right away, but he had managed to actually hold on to the upper hand for a long time. After 5 minutes of fighting the two forces broke apart and Naruto took count of his clones. 34 were left not including himself, while Geto's squad A had been reduced to numbers of a mere and wimpy 20. Naruto swore at the expense of chakra and he knew he couldn't afford to waste any more. He had poured a lot into making those last clones and he hadn't gotten a proper rest either, so he was still tired. Naruto flipped back and landed by Tazuna and landed on his knee, panting heavily. He turned and looked to see that his worthless team was still immobile. Well, Sakura had finally awoken Sasuke, but the boy wasn't moving very fast. Naruto shook his head and settled into a basic taijutsu stance, since that was all he knew. His clones followed his lead and they all glared at Geto and his gang. Naruto knew that he wouldn't be able to last much longer and he prayed for one miracle at least. Naruto let out a low growl as Geto began to laugh wildly. I hired ninja for this task, and I still am doing it with my men that I can't have do it for free. Gato bellowed and Naruto snarled at him. You're a sick twisted bastard, and if I get my hands on you, I swear. Naruto let the threat hang, and he continued to glare at Gato. Then let's go. Defeat my men and fight me. The short little man yelled and Naruto let out a battle cry and took a step forward until he heard a buzzing sound. Ahhhh. Gato screamed in agony as a small bolt buried itself in his shoulder. Naruto stopped as he ran and looked to see where the arrow had come from, and the sight he saw made him smile happily. Inari was standing about 30 feet from the army on the bridge, and he had his right hand loosely hanging at his side while he held a crossbow in the other. He smirked at the men before him, but Naruto sighed when he saw the boy's knees trembling. He's about to piss his pants. Naruto thought. Kill that kid. Gato screamed in fury as he tried to pull the bolt out of his back. Gato's men cheered and began to run at Inari, who dropped the crossbow in horror, but they all stopped when they heard an inhuman snarl come from Naruto. Slowly they all turned and found Naruto standing with his arms hanging at his sides with his head down. Tazuna had taken a few steps back in fear of the blonde boy. Naruto shook violently and slowly he raised his head and made eye contact with the small army. His canines had grown out much longer and hung over his bottom lip, while his hair had grown a bit longer and seemed spikier and rough around the edges. The sight that scared them most of all though was Naruto's red eyes. The boy was glaring at the army in anger as he felt power flood through his veins. He snarled again and all of his clones dispersed in a massive poof, covering his whole side of the bridge in a cloud. Gato tried grabbing at the bolt again and stared at the cloud in horror. What is happening? He asked himself as a sudden wave of chakra unleashed itself and washed across the bridge, bringing the weaker men in his group to their knees. What power is this? He muttered. Ah! He heard a sudden scream, and orange blurs began to shoot out of the smoke. Gato watched as hundreds of Naruto clones descended from the sky on his army. The Naruto clones landed right in front of them and growled evilly before attacking. They dashed in crippling men left and right, evading attacks and behaving more like an animal than human. Gato whimpered and scooted away from the turmoil towards the white cloud. As he scooted back he soon ran into a pair of legs. He slowly turned to see Tazuna glaring at him wickedly and he held out his hand as a Naruto clone hinged into a wooden club. Gato gulped as Tazuna grabbed the club and swung it wickedly at the man's chest. Wham! Gato was sent rolling as the club destroyed several of his ribs. Gato slowly sat up coughing and Tazuna walked over to him and grabbed him by the neck and held him at eye level. You bastard, you ordered your men to kill my grandchild. Tazuna yelled as he glared at Gato, whose sneer was replaced by a look of horror. Tazuna shook his head and raised the club for the finishing blow, but suddenly changed his mind. He turned to look at the real Naruto who was staring at him dully. Take care of the trash boy. Tazuna said and threw Gato at the blonde's feet. Gladly, Naruto said in a feral voice and grabbed Gato by the shirt and yanked him up to eye level. This is going to hurt. He said and threw Gato up into the air. The man only flew up about 10 feet, but two Naruto clones ran at him and before he could land both clones, in perfect sync, spun in a circle to increase their momentum and hit Gato with a double rocket kick that sent him flying into the air. Naruto looked at Tazuna who nodded his head. Naruto grinned darkly and suddenly Narutos were leaping off each other's backs, climbing higher and higher into the air. Soon a clone jumped up above Gato and brought his foot down on the man's gut, sending him hurtling towards earth, actually towards a cement bridge. The man slammed into the bridge and Tazuna winced from the sound. When the dust settled, Gato was laying in a small crater but was still alive surprisingly. Only Naruto wasn't done yet. Tazuna saw a shadow pass over his head and he looked up to see the real Naruto coming from the sky at insane speeds. His blood-red eyes were frightening with his evil snarl. His fist was brought back behind his head and before Gato could blink it was in his gut. Boom. Tazuna was knocked on his ass as wind and dust blew wildly, obscuring the vision of many. When it settled, Tazuna's jaw dropped in shock. Naruto stood panting over a large hole that went through the entire bridge. Tazuna crawled over to the hole just in time to see the small whirlpool that had showed where Gato was sent into the water at high speeds disappear. Tazuna started with shock and finally sighed with relief. Naruto swayed a little bit and his features returned to normal and all of his clones disappeared. You're lucky, kid, Naruto heard as he crashed to his knees with a massive headache. Holy shit, Naruto heard Sasuke mutter as he saw the result of the battle. Naruto's clones had done a rather good job with taking out many of the army because now only about 35 stood tall, but they were panting. Naruto slowly stood to his feet with his hand on his head and turned to his teammate. Go and finish up, fag. He said as he pushed past the Uchiha. You attacked me in our battle, you loser. Sasuke snarled suddenly and Naruto shook his head. That was Haku, your Kage Genkai isn't all-seeing and even you have blind spots. Naruto muttered and Sasuke growled but had to accept the lie. Naruto finally stopped in front of Tazuna and gave him a grin. Your problems are now gone. Naruto slowly turned back towards the army and saw that many of them still planned on fighting. Crap, I have almost no chakra left. He thought, and another wave of pain washed over his head. Nai-san. Inari yelled as the army slowly advanced on the ninja and his grandfather. All of a sudden a lone rock whizzed through the air and struck a man in the head, causing him to fall to the ground complaining about it. Naruto's gaze slowly drifted from the army to a larger group that was now behind Inari. Naruto sighed in relief at the sight he saw, and he heard Tazuna give a sigh of joy also. Naruto turned and looked at the man who was grinning with tears flowing down his face. Looks like your village has regained its courage. Naruto said and heard the villagers began to chant. A small army of 35 were unnerved at the appearance of the village. There was at least 150 people there and they were all armed and ready to use their weapons. The army made a split-second decision and ran towards a ladder on the bridge and jumped into the water and swam viciously for the shore where they took off running in their own respective directions. Naruto sighed in relief and took a few staggering steps forward, but Tazuna caught him and slung his arm around his shoulder. Easy now. The old man exclaimed and helped Naruto slowly limp over to the villagers who were all clapping for him. Why are you clapping for that loser? I am the one who eliminated the threat. Sasuke shouted as he ran towards the villagers. Stop it. He yelled as the villagers cheered for Naruto. Did you hear me? I said that was as far as he got when all of a sudden Tsunami's hand slapped him in the face and he stared at her in shock. You are an arrogant fool. She said in a voice that said don't argue back. All you have done since you have been here is jab and poke at Naruto along with your team. You are no hero. She said flatly and walked away from the Uchiha, leaving him speechless. About time, Naruto thought as the crowd swept him away, leaving Sasuke and Sakura to arouse their sensei. Nai-san, please don't leave. Two voices chorused and Naruto sighed heavily as he bent down to look the two 8-year-olds in the eyes. You guys will be fine. Inari, you're on the path to be a ninja and need to keep training until you're 10 so that you can join the academy in Konoha. Tesui, Tsunami and Tazuna agreed to take you in to give you a home, so make the best of it and enjoy having a new brother. Naruto said and the two sighed and nodded. Hi Nai-san, Inari muttered. If you say so. Tesui finished and Naruto laughed as he shouldered his pack and dug into his pockets. Here Inari, this is for you, use it wisely. Naruto said and handed Inari a pouch that Naruto always carried around in case of emergencies, but he had plenty more back at his home. In the pouch were several kunai and shuriken. Tesui, I already have given you all I can, so all I can do now is give you this. Naruto said and reached into his bag and pulled out a scroll. It's a Taijutsu scroll, it has some basic forms that I have learned also, so if you want you can become a ninja too, and Inari can show you the basics, I guess. Naruto finished and Tesui hugged him tightly. Thank you Nai-san. She said and Naruto chuckled and saw Inari eyeing the scroll. Yes Inari, you can use it too, but I had one other thing for you, Naruto muttered and slowly pulled out a green scroll. It had some basic earth jutsu on here, as well as some exercises to teach you to use jutsu. Keep practicing it and you'll be a great shinobi in no time. Naruto said and took a couple steps back and waved at the four people smiling at him. See you guys later. Naruto yelled and Tsunami winked at him. You have enough supplies to last for about a month and my recipe to make them. She yelled and Naruto laughed. He and his team walked across the bridge and they ignored him like they usually did. Naruto looked back one last time at his new family in Wave Country. So Tazuna, what are we going to name the bridge? A man asked and Tazuna chuckled. I thought about the Great Naruto Bridge, but that doesn't explain what he has done for this town. Tazuna said and closed his eyes. The name will be A Hero's Path, Aka Naruto's Journey. With that the town cheered. 2 days later. So mission report. The Sandaime said and Kakashi nodded his head and stared to explain the mission from front to beginning, and Naruto knew that trouble was about to be dealt. Well, we left the village and soon encountered Grass Ninja. Sasuke and Sakura engaged in fighting and during their fights, Naruto tried showing off and jumped in, almost killing them in the process. Then we were attacked by Zabuza of the Mist and again Naruto disobeyed orders and attacked Sasuke after he saved our lives. When we got to the town, Naruto was punished by carrying our bags and he became rather angry, and the next day Sasuke politely asked for training from him and he attacked the Uchiha. Then Naruto began to spy on Sasuke as he trained hard to learn a special technique to make up for the fact that he didn't Kage Bunshin and Naruto stole it and then mocked Sasuke with it. Then when Sasuke politely asked for training with Kage Bunshin again, Naruto laughed in his face. Also Naruto began to teach Inari, Tazuna's grandson, how to be a ninja after I told him not to. Then when we fought Zabuza and his partner on the bridge, Naruto didn't show up to aid us, and when he did he betrayed his team and attacked Sasuke. He then proceeded to converse with Zabuza and that was when I attacked. Then Naruto tried to fight off an army by himself to seem cool without consulting his team first. Kakashi finished and Naruto was twitching with anger. I see. The Sandaime said and looked at Naruto. Would you like to tell your story? He asked, already knowing that Kakashi had lied between his teeth. Yeah, okay. First, when the grass ninja attacked, I only interfered when Sakura and Sasuke were about to be killed. Then I left to help against Zabuza because my team needed me, that is why we have teams, right, and besides I left a clone with Tazuna. Then as punishment I had to carry the bags all the way to his house, and then Sasuke threatened me when I said he didn't deserve to learn the Kage Bunshin. I attacked in self-defense, and then after that Sasuke assaulted Inari and I told him to apologize and he said no, so I said that he wasn't going to learn the Kage Bunshin ever. Then Kakashi tried to force me to do it and then banned me from doing the tree walking exercise with him. I ended up learning all by myself, and then I told Sasuke that if he did better at it than me I would teach him Kage Bunshin, and if I did better he had to catch the cat 25 times without chakra. I won and they got mad, so I went back to training Inari. Kakashi never said that I couldn't train the boy at all. Then my team went to the bridge and left me behind where I defended Inari and his mother and then went to aid them on the bridge. Then Sasuke was knocked out by Haku, not me. Also, I wasn't conversing with Zabuza, I had him submitting to me because I told him about how Geto was using him. Then when the small army came I found that Kakashi was knocked out, Sasuke was out, and Sakura was fawning over him. How was I supposed to consult them when they were all beaten senseless? Naruto said, finishing his explanation. Kakashi, is this true? The Sandaime asked, and the silver-haired Jounin chuckled and scratched the back of his head. Well, some parts of it may be, he started. Case closed. Team 7 excluding Naruto, you are to be put on D-rank mission duty until further notice. You have to complete at least 200 missions in the next month or else. If you don't, Kakashi, then you will not be allowed to enter the Chunin exams, which are in 6 months if you remember correctly. Hiruzen said, holding back anger. But you can't do that. Kakashi exclaimed, and Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. Oh really? Uchiha, you have to catch the cat 50 times without chakra now. Want to keep going, Kakashi? The Sandaime asked. What did Sasuke have to do with this? Sakura demanded. Boruno Sakura, clean the whole river twice a week for 2 months. The Hokage said, and Team 7 stared at him in anger and shock. What about Payaji-san? Naruto asked, and the Hokage looked right at Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura before answering. Well, since it seems like you did mostly all of the work, Naruto, you receive all of the pay. Enjoy your time off. Dismissed. The Hokage said, and Team 7 marched out of the room. I hope you're happy, Naruto. Kakashi muttered. 25 more cat captures for Sasuke. The Hokage yelled and Naruto walked away laughing. Naruto walked along the streets of Konoha ignoring glares that came from fellow citizens. He had been gone for 3 weeks now. His first stop was the furniture store, he wanted to buy some more stuff for his home cave. Naruto walked in with his mission pay in hand and immediately found what he had wanted. A new couch and desk for studying scrolls. He also got a bookshelf, along with a new bed. Naruto bought all of the things to go with it, and when he was done buying he had used all of his mission's money up and was left with none at all. He chuckled softly as the owner of the store asked him how he was going to move all of the stuff. By myself, of course. Naruto said and formed a hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto clones filled the street as they all picked up furniture and began to march away from the store with all of the furniture in hand. Naruto was going to the cave he now used to transport his furniture into his cave. It was near the base of the Hokage monument, and from the entrance, it was a short walk to his main cave. It took him about half an hour to get to the entrance, but when he did he was happy. It was dark out and he sensed no one's presence. It was a known fact that he lived in the underground area, but no one could ever find where. Naruto walked into the cave and marched towards his home. He arrived an hour later due to the fact that getting 100 clones to fit in a tightly packed area was rather hard. Right now he was standing in his home that he had remodeled yet again. Now the cave looked even nicer than it had 5 years ago. He now had rooms better distinguished and easier to find. He had narrowed his home down to one cave that branched off to 4 other caves. In the main cave was where he kept stuff like an extra couch and just a lounging room. Then leading down one tunnel was a cave that he had built for a study. He had 3 bookshelves that were overflowing with books and scrolls. Naruto had the clones with his bookshelf bring it there and start reorganizing the shelves so they were neater. Another tunnel led off to his bathing area. In one room was his hot spring he had found when he first started visiting here. Then from the hot springs another tunnel led to the wide open pit that he loved. Another tunnel in the hot springs led to a cave that was about 20 feet in diameter and held a small natural spring. It was 10 feet deep and Naruto could bath in it and drink from it since it was constantly flowing out into Konoha's water system. The third tunnel led to his training room. It was the largest of all the caves, reaching a diameter of over 200 feet. Naruto had been shocked that such a large cave could be found under Konoha, but either way he had quickly organized the cave to fit his needs. He had built a weapons room in the training area and had created wooden targets on the walls. He had also stolen wooden dummies a few years back and had been practicing on them. And the fourth and final room was his bedroom where the rest of the stuff went pretty much. Naruto sighed heavily as he cracked his knuckles and stripped his clothing off in his room. He grabbed one of his towels and walked to his hot springs and got into the rock tub and soaked, enjoying the natural heat. As Naruto sat there pondering his thoughts and wondering about what had happened in Wave Country, the most random thing happened to him. Naruto was sitting and just enjoying his warm bath when suddenly a large water explosion drenched him and blinded him for a second. He sputtered and coughed for a little bit, and when he cleared his eyes, he saw someone sitting on the opposite side of the rock tub. "Told you we would be in touch soon," Zabuza said, and Haku giggled wildly at Naruto's expression. "You know, privacy would be rather nice," Naruto yelled as he stormed from his room. Behind him sat a confused Haku and amused Zabuza. "We just want to talk, boy," Zabuza said, and Naruto rounded on his with cold blue eyes. "Then let me change," Naruto roared as he walked into his main cave. "Oh boy," Zabuza muttered, and Haku laughed. Naruto cursed as he quickly changed into the clothes he had been carrying around in his hand. After he was finally able to change in a somewhat peaceful realm, he plopped down onto a couch just as a swirl of water left aboard Zabuza sitting on one end of the couch and a swirl of ice left Haku sitting on the other side. Naruto was left sitting in the middle of the two as they stared straight ahead. "You know, you could just walk," Naruto said in a dark voice. "Yeah, but I am just showing off for you," Zabuza said with a chuckle. "How did you find out where I lived?" Naruto asked, getting straight to the point. "Well, that was simple. I now know that you're a Jinchuriki because I saw your little display on the bridge," Zabuza began. "Wait, you saw that but didn't help? I thought you were retreating to a safe location," Naruto said angrily. "Well, we did and then we observed," Zabuza said and continued. "Now then, because I already knew that you were from Konoha, I just merely looked for a lonely outcast, and lo and behold I found you in a cave, since Haku can detract your chakra," Zabuza said, chuckling lightly as he scratched the back of his head. "That it?" Naruto asked, and Zabuza shook his head, suddenly getting serious. "No, actually I came to tell you what I couldn't on the bridge," Zabuza said, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, you were about to tell me about my mom," Naruto exclaimed, sitting up. "Yes, I was. Now sit the hell down and shut it," Zabuza said, and Naruto complied, eager to hear what the man had to say. "Okay, like I was saying on the bridge. Your mom, she was my sister," Zabuza said, and Naruto stared at Zabuza wide-eyed. "What?" the blonde shouted, and Zabuza shushed him. Yeah, you heard me, she was my sister," Zabuza said, and Naruto's socked face slowly slid away when he realized a crucial fact. "I have family," he said with tears in his eyes. "Yeah, and this family expects you to learn the ways of your clan," Zabuza said, standing to his feet. "Wait, what?" Naruto asked, shocked. "You heard me, brat, I am going to train you starting tomorrow," Zabuza said, and Naruto grinned. "So I am from a clan, eh?" Naruto asked, and Zabuza nodded. "The Uzumaki clan, one of the most powerful clan in Whirlpool. You deserve to learn what you should rightfully know," Zabuza said, and Naruto jumped in excitement. "So we are going to start training here?" Naruto asked, and Zabuza shook his head. "No, we are going to Whirlpool Country to train." Naruto stared at him in shock for a little bit. Why did he have to travel all the way to Whirlpool just to train? Why? Was all he asked. "Well, first, all the stuff you're going to learn is there. Second, how the hell am I going to train you here? I am a missing nin for Kami's sake," Zabuza roared, and Naruto nodded. "Oh yeah, but wait. I can't just leave my village," Naruto exclaimed. "So you're going to go and train for the Chunin exams?" the Hokage said, eyeing Naruto carefully. "Yeah," Naruto muttered, and the Hokage nodded. "Where are you going to train?" Sarutobi asked curiously, and Naruto looked nervous. "Whirlpool Country," Naruto muttered after a while, and the Hokage's eyebrows raised in shock. "What do you mean? That country is impossible to enter," Sarutobi exclaimed, and Naruto shook his head. "I have a teacher who is going to teach me, don't worry, Jai-san, I will be fine," Naruto said, and the Hokage sat and thought for a while. "Fine, but first you need to know. In order to enter the Chunin exams you need to have a team, so Team 7 is going to enter despite my punishment. The council is very meddling," the Hokage said, and Naruto nodded. "That's fine, when I am done with my training I will be super strong, just you watch," Naruto said, giving the man a thumbs up. "Very well, Naruto, you have 6 months before you have to return," the Hokage said, and Naruto nodded. 6 months to get stronger and learn my clan's ways," Naruto thought to himself. 6 months later. Sasuke and Sakura were walking down an alley hand in hand. The two had been dating for 5 months now, and both were happy. Sakura filled the void in Sasuke's life, and without Naruto getting in their way they were very happy. They had completed all of the missions they had to, and they were now on their way to go and eat for a date. As they walked and talked they saw up ahead of them a scene. Three ninja were harassing three kids, and Sasuke rolled his eyes. Of course someone was going to bother them as they tried to go and eat. Annoying jerk, Sakura muttered as one of the ninja pushed the boy that she recognized as Konohamaru to the ground. "Guess we should go and help." Sasuke muttered and began to walk forward. "Haha, look at this twerp." Kankuro chuckled as he picked Konohamaru up by the back of his shirt and held the boy in front of him. "You got my shoe dirty, now lick it off," the sand ninja said to Konohamaru. "Go eat poop and die." Konohamaru yelled and Kankuro laughed. "You should learn to respect your elders, guess I should teach you some manners," Kankuro said and beat his fist back. He let it fly, and right before it made contact with Konohamaru's face the boy was replaced by a log. Kankuro growled as he shook his hand and threw the log to the side. He looked ahead of him to see Sasuke and Sakura standing with Konohamaru sitting on the ground in front of them. The boy's teammates were standing against the gate in shock, watching the events unfold. "You should learn to not disturb the peace," Sasuke muttered as his Sharingan spun wildly in both eyes. "Who the hell are you?" Kankuro muttered. "Uchiha Sasuke. Baruno Sakura." The two Konoha ninjas stared at the three sand ninja in a battle of looks. Sasuke looked upon the three ninja and took in their details. One was shorter than the other two and had red hair. On his forehead he had a tattoo of some sort and he carried a gourd on his back. Sasuke then looked at the blonde girl and rolled his eyes. She had a giant fan attached to her back and she wore a black skirt that came just a little bit above her knee. Over it she wore a black tight t-shirt with the symbol of love on it. Her blonde hair hung behind her and came just below her shoulders. Sasuke looked over Kankuro and wasn't impressed. The boy wore a pair of black pants with a black collared shirt. It hung open to reveal a white t-shirt underneath. On his back he carried two large scrolls side by side. Sasuke rolled his eyes before speaking again. "So are you losers going to introduce yourselves?" he said sarcastically. "Humph, I'm Kankuro, this is Gaara, and she is Temari," Kankuro said and pointed at Konohamaru. "And that brat is going to lick my shoe now." Kankuro taking a step forward. Sasuke reacted quickly and threw a kunai with lightning speed at Kankuro who faltered. Sasuke then threw a shuriken which was stopped suddenly by Gaara who had now stepped into the light so Sasuke could see him better. He wore a pair of black shorts with a red shirt over it. The shirt was low cut and Sasuke could see black metallic mesh underneath it. Sakura gasped when she saw sand holding the shuriken inches away from Kankuro's grinning face. The sand suddenly whipped in a circle and threw the shuriken back at the unprepared Sasuke. Swish. The shuriken was suddenly pinned to the ground by a kunai that had appeared from nowhere. Everyone jumped at the appearance of the weapon and looked up into a tree that held the person who had thrown it. "I would advise you to think wisely before attacking another Konoha ninja," the figure said as he stepped out of the shadows and Sasuke and Sakura gasped. "Sensei," Sakura exclaimed and Sasuke smirked. "I suggest you soon a ninja leave now before you get hurt," Kakashi said releasing a wave of killing intent. It was suddenly washed away by a larger amount of killing intent and Kakashi looked straight at Gaara who was eyeing him seriously. "If you threaten me or my siblings I'll have to kill you," the redhead said. Kakashi shook his head and glared at the three Suna ninja. Team 7 stood their ground and Kankuro shrugged. "Let's go you guys, we don't have time to waste on these losers, the exam starts in an hour," he said and the three turned and walked away from the ninja. Sasuke grunted and Sakura let out a sigh of relief. Kakashi turned slowly to his team and smiled. "We should get going, it's time for the exams almost and you guys can't be late," he said and disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves. "So don't give us a lift at all," Sasuke muttered and began walking leaving the three frightened children to cower against the gate. Sasuke and Sakura walked into the building that the exam was in and found it packed already. Ninjas from many different countries were there and they were all conversing among their own teams. Sasuke and Sakura immediately located the area that the Konoha rookies were all standing and walked over to them. "What's up Sasuke?" Kiba said and Sasuke nodded. Sakura Ino said darkly. Oh Ino hey," Sakura said and ticked Ino off. "So we're all here then?" Sasuke said and Kiba shook his head. "We're missing one person," the Inyazuka said and Sasuke nodded, remembering there was one more genin that should be with them. "Yeah but he has been gone for 6 months now," Sakura said and the 11 Konoha ninjas laughed. They became silent as they felt the glares of countless enemies on their back. Sasuke eyed the competition carefully and sighed after he found several ninja who looked like they could pose a threat. He reached over and pulled Sakura next to him as he sat down on the bench behind them and he stroked her hair as she rested. The two sat there in silence until finally the official walked into the room and Kiba couldn't help but make a gagging noise when he saw the man's scars. "Listen up maggots," he yelled. My name's Genma and your asses are mine for the first exam. Oh yes, Sasuke muttered and Genma rounded on him. What was that? He asked darkly. Nothing, Sasuke muttered. Didn't think so. The Jounin said and pointed towards the room they were supposed to go to. Get your sorry asses in there and do not sit by your teammates. The Genin marched into the room and sat down and were careful not to sit by their teammates. Sasuke sat in the middle of the room while Sakura sat in the very front. Sasuke and Sakura wondered how long they would get away with the fact that they didn't have a third teammate. They sat stock still as stared at Genma who was eyeing them carefully. Many Genin flinched under his look as it passed over them. Suddenly it came to rest on someone in the back of the room and Genma gave a wicked smirk. Oh, so you think you're cool, huh? He said, and almost everyone in the room turned to see a Genin in the back of the room with his feet up on his desk. He had a black heavy cloak on over his body, so Sasuke couldn't see any of his features. Yeah, I guess I do. So are we going to start this test soon? The person said, and Sasuke saw many Jounin and Chunin in the room smirk at the Genin's boldness. Be pretty beepy, but I feel as though you're going to be the first one to go. Genma said and looked at the whole class. There are 10 questions on the test. For every question you get wrong you lose a point. Your score is combined with your team's score and it is a total out of 30. If your team misses more than 10 then you are all kicked out of the exam. The last question will be asked by me. Genma said and the Genin all fidgeted nervously. Anyone caught cheating will get docked 2 points and if you are caught 3 times you get kicked out along with the rest of your team. You start now. The man yelled and suddenly papers appeared in front of every Genin in the room. Sasuke looked over the questions and sighed. They were impossible and he rubbed his eyes in thought as he thought about what Genma had said. No cheating, wait, he said, if you get caught 3 times, he never said we would get kicked out the first time. Sasuke thought and saw that Sakura was writing furiously. Of course his girlfriend knew the answers, she was the smartest Genin almost. Sasuke quietly activated his Sharingan and copied her hand movements and soon he had every answer written down. As he was writing he heard many people busted cheating and they all got docked. He saw several teams kicked out of the exam and they slowly walked out with gloomy looks. Sasuke laid his head down so no one could cheat off him and he fell asleep. Genma's voice awoke him suddenly and he sat up and found that 1/4 of the room's occupants had been kicked out by now. Okay, you little shits, time for the 10 question. First though you have a choice. You can choose to answer the question, but if you get it wrong then you will be kicked out of the exam along with your whole team and none of you can ever take the exam again. You could also choose to walk out of the exam now and try again next year. Genma said and waited. Slowly several Genin stood and their teams groaned as they walked out of the room. Soon about half of the room was empty and Sasuke and Sakura were still there. Genma looked around and chuckled. Are you guys sure? I mean, if you get it wrong then. Oh, just ask the damn question. Sasuke heard the person who was in the back yell. Sasuke and half the class turned and found the person in the same position. Hey, you didn't move an inch in the whole exam. Genma said angrily. Damn right I didn't. This is the only question that really matters, none of that bullshit on the test, so just ask the question. The person yelled and Genma smirked. Fine, anyone else wanna leave? He asked and no one stood. Well, it seems that you all pass. Wait, what? Someone exclaimed and Genma chuckled. In the ninja world you will have to make tough choices and they may not always be the right ones. This test was designed to test your courage. Genma said, and before he could continue the person in the black cloak stood and walked from the room. Hey, where the hell are you going? Genma shouted and the person raised a hand. I don't want to listen to your boring lecture anymore. The person said and began to walk away again. Not so fast, punk. A sudden shout said as someone crashed through the door and flew past the person grabbing their cloak as they went past. You have to stick around to find out where the next exam is. The woman said as she rolled to a stop and threw her hands up, ending her routine. She had her head back for more oomph, but when she looked at the Genin, she saw that a lot of them were staring at the person who she had flown past in shock. She looked over and the sight surprised her as well. Loser. Sasuke said, standing to his feet suddenly. Naruto stood in front of everyone in the room with a sad frown on his face. Naruto. Kiba exclaimed. Naruto's appearance had really changed in the last 6 months. He now had on a pair of black pants with random blue slashes on them. He had on a black t-shirt and over that was a blue short-sleeved cloak that reached a little bit past his knees. Along the bottom of it were waves and on the back of the cloak was a crescent moon and in the small opening of the moon was a spiral. The moon was a light blue while the spiral was red. On his back was a slender scroll and a sword, both crossed to make an X. The sheath of the sword was completely black and the hilt was a pattern of black with blue diamonds along both sides of it. Naruto's hit-eye was tied to a belt loop on his pants and hung in front of his right pocket. His hair hung loosely in front of his face and it was much longer. It now covered his eyes almost and everyone could see the tattoo on his right arm. The tattoo was really cool, as some people would explain. It showed the same symbol that was on Naruto's cloak, only this one seemed to shimmer when Naruto moved. "Damn, you blew my cover, you crazy bitch," he muttered, and in that moment Naruto got his very own fan club. Whoa, Hinata muttered at Naruto's new appearance. "He is," Temari said, raising an eyebrow. "Really hot," Ino said beneath her breath. "You're the little brat that was annoying me," Genma said with a look of shock across his face. "No, it was the wall," Naruto said as he slowly walked back to his seat, ignoring all of the looks he got on the way there. He plopped down into his seat and watched Anko in anger. Ino and Temari acted quickly and were seated next to him, trying to talk to him. "Hey Naruto, you know you look really cool," Ino said sweetly. "Biggie, say what?" Naruto said beneath his breath, and Ino sighed. Sasuke was glaring at Naruto with as much hatred as he could muster. The boy had simply stolen all of the attention in the room as though he wasn't trying. That loser, he thought as he slowly turned away from Naruto and his two new little stalkers. "Well," Anko said as she tried to figure out what had just happened. "Genma, it seems you have a lot of genin left in here, but no matter," Anko said and looked right at Sasuke. "I'll cut that number in half." She laughed maniacally. "You're crazy," Kiba said in a frightened tone, and Anko looked at him with a grin. "I know, and I'm proud. Now everyone meet me at the Forest of Death now." She bellowed and jumped out of the window and disappeared from view. "Tuck my luck," Naruto said as he pushed Temari and Ino away from him. "I don't like stalkers." But that Naruto walked from the room and everyone slowly followed him. "So it seems that you're all here, I see," Anko said, and the group of genin all nodded. "Well then, everyone get with their teams and get your asses in line, now," she bellowed, and everyone complied. Soon there were 2 lines of genin and they all stood in front of Anko, who had lain 22 scrolls in front of her. 11 on one side and 11 on the other. She looked up again. "Alright maggots, your team needs to take one of these scrolls and go to your assigned gate number. The objective is to get a heaven scroll if you have a earth scroll, and a earth scroll if you have a heaven scroll, got it? When you get your scrolls, go to the tower over there," she said and pointed into the distance at a tower that no one saw. "You guys have 3 days, good luck." Slowly every team got their scrolls, and when Team 7 was about to pick their own up, Anko held it back and chuckled. "Hope you don't get killed, Uzumaki," she said, and threw him a heaven scroll which he caught in his hand and walked off towards their gate number. Soon they arrived at gate 44 and slowly they walked in, being careful to watch their backs. Sasuke glared at Naruto while he held Sakura's hand. Naruto ignored both of his teammates as he walked through the forest. After 4 minutes silence, Naruto finally spoke up. "Okay, we have to be careful in here, everyone is an enemy," the blonde said, and Sasuke growled. "Don't even think about coming in here and thinking that you are going to take over the team now, you loser," Sasuke said darkly, and Naruto turned to look at him. "I don't care if you're the last Uchiha or not, if you make any move to mess me up, I will kill you and hang you from a tree branch by your intestines," Naruto said, letting a little wave of killing intent seep from him. "You don't scare me, loser," Sasuke said as his fist shook from the killing intent. "Then why are you shaking?" Naruto said as he beeped his head to the side. "I'm not here to fight you guys, but if you cross me I will not hold back, and Sasuke, I am not as weak as I was before," Naruto said, and Sakura rolled her eyes. "You think too highly of yourself, Naruto," she said, and Naruto shrugged. "So does your boyfriend," he said, and turned and continued to walk along, hoping that his team would follow. He was surprised when they actually did. "So where were you for 6 months?" Sasuke asked, trying to pry some information out of Naruto. "None of your business," Naruto replied. Sasuke growled when Naruto wouldn't answer his question. They continued to walk in silence through the forest, looking for anyone else that might have a scroll. Naruto looked down at the scroll in his hand and found that it was a heaven scroll, so they needed a earth scroll. Naruto sighed and put the scroll in his pocket and picked up his pace. He hoped that he could find someone that had an earth scroll fast and then get the hell out of the woods. Team 7 continued to walk along the path they were on until they came across a small stream. "Okay, I guess we can stop here for now since we haven't found any other teams yet," Naruto said as he sat down and let his scroll roll off onto the ground. "We need to keep moving, loser, other ninja will want to attack us if we are not careful," Sasuke exclaimed, but even Sakura sighed and sat down. "Oh come on Sasuke-kun, just a little rest please," she whined, and Sasuke sighed and sat down next to her. "Okay, so here is our game plan," Naruto said as they got comfortable. "If we are attacked, you guys do what you want, I'll take care of myself," the blonde said, and Sasuke smirked. "Then why don't you just go and do things yourself right now?" the Uchiha asked, and Naruto shrugged. "Because I don't feel like it, and besides you guys need my help to survive," Naruto said as he stood to his feet. "And why is that?" Sasuke asked as he stood to his feet. "Because there are strong opponents out here," Naruto said as he ducked under a barrage of kunai. He quickly turned and threw his own kunai into the bush that the enemy was in and was happy to hear a grunt when the kunai hit home. A ninja walked out from the bush holding his now bleeding arm in agony. "You little shit," the boy groaned as he stared at Naruto angrily. "Get out of here before I hurt you," Naruto said, and the ninja laughed. "Oh, you're tough," he said, and Naruto shook his head. "Suit yourself," the blonde said as he disappeared in a small vortex of water. He reappeared behind the enemy ninja and spun his foot around and caught the boy in the injured arm. He put enough force into the kick to knock the boy to the ground, and he brought his foot around in another circle and then brought it down on the boy's stomach. "Uzumaki Taijutsu style, and that's not even the royal family style," Naruto said as he jumped back from the boy. "Holy shit," Sakura muttered, and Sasuke seethed in anger. "Loser," he growled. Naruto landed softly and slid his left foot behind him and his right foot forwards. He held his right hand down towards his left leg and crossed his left hand under it so that his arms made a figure 4. Naruto bent his knees slightly as he waited for the enemy to get up and fight. "Lucky shot." The boy wheezed and got to his feet. Naruto ran at him and launched his right hand out and grabbed his neck while his left hand slammed into his gut. As he applied as much force as he could to his left hand, he pulled back with his right hand and flipped the boy up into the air. He then let go of the boy's neck and flipped him with his left arm while he was still in the air. He then brought his right hand around and grabbed the boy's neck and slammed him down into the ground where he lay unconscious. Naruto stood to his feet and looked at his shocked team. "That is a basic move. I have mastered the regular and royal Uzumaki Taijutsu style and have also mastered the basics of the regular Uzumaki Kenjutsu style," Naruto said, and Sasuke took a step back. "Lead the way, Naruto," the Uchiha said fearfully. "Yeah, Naruto, let's go and win," Sakura added in a squeaky voice. Naruto ran at him and launched his right hand out and grabbed his neck while his left hand slammed into his gut. As he applied as much force as he could to his left hand, he pulled back with his right hand and flipped the boy up into the air. He then let go of the boy's neck and flipped him with his left arm while he was still in the air. He then brought his right hand around and grabbed the boy's neck and slammed him down into the ground where he lay unconscious. Naruto stood to his feet and looked at his shocked team. "That is a basic move. I have mastered the regular and royal Uzumaki Taijutsu style and have also mastered the basics of the regular Uzumaki Kenjutsu style," Naruto said, and Sasuke took a step back. "Lead the way, Naruto," the Uchiha said fearfully. "Yeah, Naruto, let's go and win," Sakura added in a squeaky voice. The trio walked silently as they started on the second day in the forest. After the incident with the enemy ninja, they hadn't been bothered again by another ninja. They were able to make it through the night, and Naruto had immediately taken on the role of the leader. It was mainly due to the fact that he had instilled fear into Sasuke and Sakura when he showed his sudden change in strength. The fear would eventually wear off though, so he wasn't going to let himself get used to it. The three walked in a straight line with Naruto in front, Sakura in the middle, and Sasuke in the back. Naruto had done this because as far as he knew he was the strongest one in the group, so he would take on frontal attacks, while Sasuke scanned the area around them with his Sharingan. So far the plan was working well because they had managed to disarm most of the pathetic traps that they found set along their path. Naruto bit his lip as he listened to the unnaturally quiet environment. If there was one thing he learned in the 6 months that he was gone, it was that you should never trust silence. Flashback no jutsu begin. Naruto walked along the barren field that he was training in, trying to be alert for any surprise attacks. The wind had been blowing wildly, and he could hear the crash of the ocean waves as they battled the shore eternally. He slowly drew a kunai jumpy since he didn't know where Zabuza would strike from next. Suddenly the wind slowly stopped blowing and the waves began to settle down until everything was calm. Naruto sighed thankfully since he was able to focus on the task at hand easier. He sat down knowing he would hear if an enemy approached and then he would act. He had been out here for 3 days now and he was tired, so he was going to rest his feet for a while. He set the kunai down beside him and reached into the bag behind him. He pulled out a delicious purple apple that only grew on Whirlpool Country. It had a juicy taste to it and the inside was blue. Naruto opened his mouth to take a bite and before he closed his eyes there was a white flash, and when the flash disappeared he found that he was holding on to half of an apple. He was shaking as his face displayed utter shock. Standing next to him was Zabuza with the other half of his apple in his hand and the man was eating it. "You let your guard down just because it got quiet and you thought you could hear me," the man said, taking another bite from the apple. Naruto still was shaking as he stared at the halved apple. Flashback no jutsu end. If there was one thing that Zabuza had always made sure he knew, it was that silence never meant good things. When it became silent, a ninja should be more alert because an enemy would expect you to let your guards down, having the mentality that you would be able to hear any ambushes easier. Naruto slowly drew out a 2 kunai and held them at his sides and the points pointed back at his teammates. Kenjutsu, the art of sword fighting, techniques could be applied to many blade-like weapons, and Naruto had taken to using his kunai in tight places, where swinging a sword would be rather stupid. Of course the Uzumaki Kenjutsu style wasn't intended for kunai use, so when he fought with it, he couldn't use many of the more advanced attacks, since the kunai didn't have the reach of his sword. He held the kunai at ready before he spoke very softly and let the wind carry his words back to his team. Careful, silence means surprise attack. Naruto's words said as they echoed in Sakura's and Sasuke's ears. Leave it to me, loser. Sasuke muttered, and Naruto sighed. He knew it wouldn't be long before Sasuke's ego got too big for the space it was intended for. You're going to commit an act of suicide from your stupidity, Naruto thought as he turned to the Uchiha. No. Was all he said as he continued to walk. Sasuke grunted behind him angrily, but Naruto didn't really care. The three continued to walk along the forest path, hoping to come across an unaware team, hopefully one of the Konoha teams. Of course they didn't come across any of them, instead they came across a team of weird-looking ninjas from grass country. They were all wearing gas masks for some reason, and they were breathing really heavy as though they had just ran for an hour. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura all stopped and quickly formed a line as they found the three other ninja waiting for them in a clearing. Naruto sighed because he knew that he was right about the silence. He tightened his grip on his kunai as he thought about his possible move list. He could do some wicked combos with the small ninja weapons, or he could switch weapons in mid-fight, which would throw the enemies off completely. Ha, we finally found the team that has been deactivating our traps. The person that Naruto quickly identified as the leader said, and Naruto groaned. The boy's voice was annoying, and Naruto wanted to stick a kunai in his voice box to end the suffering his ears had to endure. So that was you guys, eh? Naruto said as he dropped into the Uzumaki Kenjutsu style. He stood sideways looking at the enemy ninja. His knees were bent slightly and his right arm was slightly extended in front of him and he held his hand sideways so that the kunai pointed to the left. His left hand was back near his leg with the kunai facing forward so that he could thrust it if need be. The style was made so that one could attack with a sword in one hand while being able to use their open hand to use jutsu, or if need be quickly grab their sword and add more force behind their blows or to put more strength into their defense. All of the Uzumaki styles had one thought in mind, and that was to flow with the speed of battle and use your opponent's attack to your advantage. If they went right then you should go left and spin around them and kill them, which was how the style went. Naruto had of course, as he said, only mastered the basics of the regular Uzumaki Kenjutsu style. Unlike the Taijutsu style, Uzumaki Kenjutsu was very complicated and it would take Naruto a couple years to actually master it to its fullest degree. As for the Taijutsu style, it was almost natural for his body, so it was much easier to learn, but he hadn't mastered the styles really, he just said that to get his team worked up. Zabuza had him practicing it, but he had only learned all of the moves in the regular style and was about halfway through learning the royal style, which was much more powerful than the regular style. Zabuza told Naruto that if he mastered both royal and regular Taijutsu styles, he would teach him the final style of the Uzumaki Taijutsu. Naruto took a deep breath and let it out as he closed his eyes and thought about how they should handle this predicament. Flashback no jutsu begin. You see, the benefits of having a three-man cell is that everyone covers everyone's weaknesses. So if you sucked at Genjutsu you could rely on one of your teammates to dispel any Genjutsu cast on you or vice versa. Zabuza said, and Naruto nodded as he stored the information in the back of his mind. Yeah, Naruto, let's say you're in a fight and you are only able to handle one enemy, you can rely on your teammates to stop any other potential threats to you. Haku added, and both Zabuza and Naruto nodded. So it really helps if you and your team can work together well, because if you have poor teamwork, then you can't get anywhere because there will always be confusion and no order. Zabuza said, and Naruto nodded. Right, need to have fluid work to make things work. The blonde said, and Zabuza nodded and ruffled his hair. Good, now go and do 250 water push-ups, and after that you need to practice your taijutsu for 3 hours. Oh come on. Naruto exclaimed. Do it now, or else you'll be giving me double the amount. Zabuza said warningly. Come on Naruto-kun, I'll work with you. Haku said as she took his hand and the two left the house they were in. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto hung his head in sadness. Team 7's teamwork was worse than 2 rabid cats and 3 rabid dogs. He turned and looked at Sasuke and Sakura and rolled his eyes as he finally came up with a solution. How good is your teamwork? He asked quietly and Sasuke answered for him and his girlfriend. Very good, not that you'd understand something of that caliber. The Uchiha said, and Naruto held back an insult. I want to kill you. He screamed in his head. Fine, then you guys handle the wimps, I will take care of the leader. Naruto said as he settled back into his fighting stance. Always taking the glory, huh? Sasuke spit out and Naruto shrugged. Hey, this team needs at least one strong person, right? he asked before charging in. It took the team by surprise that the blonde had just rushed at them out of nowhere. Naruto smirked and spun in a circle, bringing both arms out in front of him. He almost sliced the leader's face open, had the boy not been able to pull up his own kunai in time. Naruto flipped away and landed back by his team and settled back into his fighting stance. Go. He shouted and it seemed to get everyone's attention. Sasuke and Sakura grinned at each other and took off running at the enemies while the leader ran at Naruto. The boy jumped over Sasuke's head and landed and continued to run at Naruto, with his arm outstretched, in order to stab him. Naruto waited in his fighting stance, and as the boy drew closer he closed his eyes and let time slow down around him. Flashback no jutsu begin. This technique right here will help you greatly with using Uzumaki style. Zabuza said as he sat on top of a giant boulder. How? Naruto asked as he scrambled up onto his own. When you meditate and play with your chakra you become aware of things better. Most of the 7 swordsmen were taught this and used it in battles. Zabuza explained, and Naruto nodded. So I just sit here and meditate? He asked after a while and Zabuza nodded. Yes, just control your chakra and create shapes within your body or try to enhance your senses with it. Zabuza said, and Naruto nodded. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto took a deep breath and opened his eyes. He saw time moving slightly slower than usual due to his meditations. The technique went well with his style of fighting because it allowed him to see opening in his opponent's moves and use them to his advantage. The meditation thing wasn't a technique, it was more of a way to become more aware of your surroundings. So technically you could say Naruto just took in every detail faster than he usually could. As the boy lunged at him, Naruto slowly spun right and around the leader and delivered a vicious chop to the back of his shoulder. The boy stumbled from the sudden blow, but otherwise he regained his balance and did a quick spin trying to slash open Naruto's face. Naruto ducked under the blow and came up right behind it and grabbed the boy's arm and stopped it in mid-flight. He swung his left leg around to crush the boy's ribs, but unfortunately he had only gotten a hold of the boy's left arm and not his right. The leader stopped Naruto's kick with his right hand and the two stood there holding back one another's blows. Naruto put more force behind his foot until the leader had no choice but to jump backwards. Naruto watched as the boy landed and ran through some sloppy hand seals. Until he landed on the last one and slammed his palms into the ground. Raiden. Dendu and Dari. The boy exclaimed as a wave of lightning flew across the ground at Naruto. The blonde jumped over the wave and landed lightly on the ground again and took on his fighting stance again. Is that it? He asked and the leader smirked. Naruto frowned until suddenly he felt a sharp jolt travel throughout his whole body and he collapsed to his knee breathing heavily. He growled at the leader who was smirking at him. Naruto put 2 and 2 together and realized that the boy had just redirected his attack and Naruto had foolishly thought that he had dodged the attack but forgot that Raiden users could actually control the lightning they formed. Well, I bet you have already found out that your nervous system is messed up. The leader said as he stood to his feet. But don't be ashamed, you're not a first to fall victim to that technique. It is very common in our village among Raiden users, we simply have lightning mess up the electric pulses your brain sends to your muscles and boom, you no longer can control your own actions. The boy said grinned wildly. You're good, well somewhat. But you forgot, just because you know a big technique doesn't mean it always works the same way on different people. You only messed up my body functions, so for example. Naruto said and slowly got to his feet. When I try to move my arms I move my legs and when I try to blink I actually wiggled my toes. So now that I have figured out basic motor movements, then this should be my battle. Naruto said as he took on a sloppy fighting stance. The leader stared at him in shock before bursting out laughing. Are you serious? Give up your scroll. You can't fight me you idiot, I'll kill you. Naruto took a deep breath and after a while he managed to make a cross seal with his hands. Hage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 clones appeared by his side and they all stood awkwardly, trying to figure out how to use their muscles, even though Naruto had shared that information with them. The leader watched as Naruto slowly went through another set of seals and ended on the serpent seal before grinning at him. Well you see, if you are going to take my movements then that means I will have to take your vision. Karigakur no Jutsu. Slowly mist began to surround the area they were all standing in and Naruto saw the leader's shocked expression. Naruto knew that Sasuke could see due to his Sharingan and so he had no need to worry about that fag. He slowly moved his head around as he tried to step out of the mist. After a minute he finally achieved his goal and then he made his way over to a tree. It wouldn't be long until he regained control over his body thanks to the QB and his rapid healing the problem should be fixed in no time. He knew that the idiot in the mist was panicking because he could sense it. Zabuza had taught him this jutsu because he could use it almost as good as the man himself. Flashback no jutsu begin. Yo Naruto come here. Zabuza shouted and Naruto nodded and ran from his spar with Haku. Yeah, Zabuza sensei. he asked, and Zabuza cracked his knuckles. "I'm going to teach you your third jutsu today," the man said, and Naruto pumped his fist in excitement. "Alright, what will it be? Another cool water technique or some lame thing?" Naruto trailed off, but Zabuza shook his head. "Nope, I'm going to teach you the mist technique actually," Zabuza said, and Naruto's eyes widened. He had wanted to learn the technique for a long time. "Seriously, but why?" Naruto asked, and Zabuza chuckled. "Because you have the potential to use it to extreme capabilities," Zabuza said, and continued on explaining his reasoning. "With the technique you know that you blind people well, since the mist is really your chakra, you can easily find out where people are in the mist and you can somewhat see clearly. Now if you were to use a technique like Kage Bunshin with this attack," Zabuza said, and allowed Naruto to try and think of the rest. "I'll be able to strike from almost any area and the enemy would never know. Or I could just send in shadow clones and stay safely outside the mist," Naruto said happily, and Zabuza nodded. "Now you got it, but here are the hand seals you need to use." Zabuza aids starting to teach Naruto the technique. Flashback: no jutsu end. Naruto leaned against a tree while thinking wildly. Should he go all out now, send his shadow clones in to finish the job? Or should he just allow his control to return and do the dirty work himself? He sighed and felt most of his control finally returning to himself. He clenched his hands together and grinned. He was back in control. He took a step forward and found that his leg listened to him again. He made a quick hand seal and dismissed the mist. As it faded, he saw the leader standing in the center of the clearing, panting slightly. Naruto beeped his head at him and grinned. "Oh, your ass is mine now," Naruto said as he slowly drew out his sword. "Gukuku, now we wouldn't want that now, would we, Uzumaki?" a cold voice suddenly said from up in a tree. "What the?" Naruto muttered and gasped as a snake erupted from the ground, swallowing the boy he had been fighting. The snake closed its mouth and disappeared in a cloud of smoke, taking the boy with him. "Oh, my god," Naruto thought, and he slowly turned to where the voice had come from. "Please, I don't want to waste any time on you, I have someone else I want," a snake-like man suddenly said from behind him, and Naruto turned and saw a face that he recognized from being with Zabuza. "Orochimaru, I should have guessed you would be here," Naruto muttered as he flipped away from the snake man and held his sword in the kinjutsu position. It was the same as the one he used with his kunai, only his left hand was empty now. "Oh, please, as much as I want to kill you because of our last encounter, I really do have more important matters to attend to," Orochimaru said, letting his tongue roll out. Naruto shuddered at the disgusting thing and ran at Orochimaru. "I asked please," Orochimaru said as a snake appeared in front of Naruto as he ran. The blonde wasn't able to slow himself down and ran right into the gaping maw of the snake that clamped its mouth shut as soon as he was in it. "Damn it," Naruto cursed as he was surrounded in darkness. He clenched his fist and pushed his sword against the snake's insides, but found he couldn't put enough force behind cut and gave up. He managed to somehow get the blade back in its sheath before he stood completely still. He had promised Zabuza that he would only use the fifth jutsu he had taught him when necessary. Naruto thought that this would qualify as necessary. He began to run through a sequence of seals until he landed on the last one and shouted. "Suiten. Daibakufu no Jutsu." The water and moisture inside of the snake began to slowly pull towards Naruto as it created a large ball of spinning water around him. His clothes were soaked as the water spun faster and faster. Soon the water sphere began to enlarge and expand. On the outside of the snake one would see that it was getting slightly bigger. Suddenly the snake got really big, and instead of being long and skinny, it blew up like a balloon and began to shake. The snake's eyes opened wide in horror as suddenly it blew apart in every direction, sending red and green water splashing across all of the exposed surfaces around the group of ninjas. Naruto stood panting in a small crater, his clothes were sticking to him and his hair had a steady stream running from it. "Damn snake." He cursed and looked up and found a sight that shocked him beyond belief. Orochimaru had a sword in his hand and the sword was rammed into Sasuke's chest and Orochimaru was elevating him in the air in front of him. Sasuke struggled on the end of the blade and Naruto stared on with shock. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys, let me know in the comments section how was the story and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, peace out.